Hey everybody, it is Leo here, and as you may have seen earlier today, I did a Alexander Floor 1 guide against the Oppressor boss. Now, this here is the Floor 2 guide, and as you can see, I've had a little bit of experience with this fight. We've gone in and wiped a couple times at this point. Basically, it's a lot like turn 4 in the first coil. It's just a gauntlet of enemies and it's wave after wave. I think it's 9 or 10 total waves. The enemies do hit relatively hard. It's the same kind of like trash mobs that we were dealing with leading into the fight itself. Now you'll notice there are Mog walkers off in the corner there, the Gob walkers, Magitech Gob walker. One player can get into those, and they do have some debuffs on them, like where you can make the enemies take more damage. They do also have the ability to do something with bombs that will come up later in the fight's mechanics. Now, the real key to this fight, honestly, is tank coordination. And these enemies, like I said, they hit hard, and a couple of them are really heavy hitters, and you almost need to balance out which tank's getting which mob, but you need to do it on the fly. So if you're tanking this fight, unlike Floor 1, which was very tank basic, this is very tank extensive. You definitely need to be paying attention to your enemy threat gauge that I have set on the middle left of my screen there, and both tanks need to be paying attention to making sure they're sharing the workload evenly, especially knowing which mobs hit the hardest, which would be, for example, these Yagdals. I'm sure I'm saying that word wrong. Yagdals. They hit their priority number 2. They hit the second hardest out of anything in here, and they're fairly common. So when you've got them plus like that hard mind or any of those guys that are just bigger sized goblins, they're pretty heavy hitters, and you need to watch out for them and make sure one tank's not dealing with all of them. Now, after this wave, as you notice, each wave has slowly gotten more and more mobs in it. After this wave begins when the bombs start being shot into the arena, and they're a lot like the Brave Flock's long stop bombs in that they're the big size bombs, except you can't destroy them this time. You can either avoid their fairly massive AoE radius, getting hit with it gets you with a stack of flame resistance down, so each time you're successfully hit by the bomb, the more massive damage you take. Or you can have the person in your Gob Walker use their little chain ability to drag the bomb away. Now, that obviously allows you to kind of keep everything in one place, but you're losing a DPS or a healer to do that. Now, these Magitech, the boom type Magitech Gob Walker that I'm targeting right now, these guys need to be your priority 1. They give a stack of vulnerability up every 10 seconds roughly. So whichever tank is handling that is going to get massively shithoused if it's not killed quickly, especially if he's doing his job and tanking other mobs at the same time. So the party really needs to focus them down right away, mark them if you have to, just pay attention to those specifically. Everyone calls them the red ad, and that's what you need to really be looking out for here. So, we're on wave 5. It's pretty easy to manage at this point. It is a timed system. In other words, like at a set time interval, the waves pop. However, even at I-170 as a party, you should be getting through these first couple waves, where you're downing them before the next wave comes out. Now, I think as soon as you finish a wave, the next one force pops, but if you don't kill them in time, the next one will eventually pop of its own accord. Anyway, I'm not too sure about that part. I still have to test it out. Now, these big guys, these Gob Widows, they do hit the hardest out of everybody in here, as could be assumed by their large size. However, there's only a few of them. I think 4 total show up in this whole thing, if I'm not mistaken. And this is the first pair, obviously. After this wave is when things start getting a little bit more complicated and things start to come at you a little bit faster. The next wave's a group of 6 enemies. And I think there's 1 or 2 Yagdals and 2 bigger sized goblins in there. So it's your first real task with several heavy hitters in one grouping. So it's at this point that I would suggest the party hold their cooldowns until about this stage here. You should be able to get through the next couple waves without much incident, but it's better to be safe than sorry here. Now, I obviously have memorized where, as you can tell from the video, where these groups are popping up from, and I try to get in position for them ahead of time for obvious reasons. That quick pickup prevents them from running all over and rampaging your healers. So At this stage, it's a good idea for both tanks to kind of grab whatever group of enemies they're going to get the threat secured, and then stack together like we're doing here. Primarily because any obviously AoE damage or will help take them down quicker, but AoE heals as well. Now, as you're seeing me type in the chat, after this wave, you've got 2 back-to-back waves with those boom type gobwalkers. So the invulnerability up guys come back to back, and they come accompanied with several monsters. This is where most groups will get overwhelmed. It is definitely a DPS check, but it's really more than just that, because at I-170 you can easily get this done. It's just a matter of the coordination here. Now you'll see I had some trouble targeting this guy on the fly, which was an issue. Our Dark Knight ran in and kind of grabbed everything. Now I wanted to make sure I definitely got the Gobwalker off of him, but he was just going hardcore with his threat at this point. So I realized I need to grab some of these other mobs off of him. He's starting to get these vulnerability stacks. That's the kind of awareness both tanks need to have for each other here. Now eventually I will get a hold on a few of these, including the Gobwalker himself, to prevent the other tank from getting more stacks. So the tank swap invoking mechanic that we're so used to dealing with is not a bad thing to employ here. It shouldn't be necessary if both tanks are on their game, but in an emergency it certainly helps. Now our group, this particular group's 4th attempt, I believe, 3rd or 4th attempt, so they'd gotten accustomed to the waves. And if it's pure memorization, really. I mean, we had never, in any of the groups I'd done this with, we had never downed this group of enemies before the next wave appeared. So that was quite helpful in managing the next spot. So you can see the next wave with the next Gobwalker did appear. And now we start having a couple big guys come in all together. So this is where you got to get complicated. I wanted to make sure I only had the Gobwalker and the Gob Widow, the big guy, and let the Dark Knight take the rest of them. Now it's critical you take the Gobwalker down, and it's ideal if you can take him out and the Gob Widow, because the next wave will have another Gob Widow. It'll have 2 Yagged dolls, which we already still have 1 from this wave up. So even though our DPS in this particular run was on top of it and doing an exceptional job, I knew we were going to be left with at least 2 heavy-hitting mobs from this group when the next wave spawned here momentarily. So I made the call that I would go ahead and just use Hallowed Ground and gather everything up and let us cast or limit break 2 the group of enemies down. It's a good method to attempt if your party's getting LB2s by this point, because in the next 5 seconds these mobs are going to spawn and you can get overrun very, very easily, even with your regular repertoire of cooldowns. Now the Gob Widow will spawn over there on the north side. The 2 Yagged dolls will be in the southwest corner over here, so I tried to grab them as quickly as possible because they're, like I said, the heaviest hitters, and I didn't want them rampaging on our healers. So my Hallowed Ground's up. I'm obviously flash spamming to make sure they're all located in one area, and I realized we're still a good 30 seconds away from LB2. Luckily, our group's DPS was so high on this run that we managed to go ahead and get pretty much all the monsters down anyway to a manageable amount. 3 hard-hitting monsters is not that hard to manage, obviously. Although at this late in the fight, cooldowns and mana can certainly become a problem in your average group, and we just kind of got lucky with how efficiently we did this. Now, most groups will not have moved quite as fast as we did and should have that level 2 limit break right around the time that wave pops up. But we managed to hang tight and hold fast and get this limit break up. As you can see, I'm telling them immediately, as soon as it's there, use it. And sure enough, as soon as it pops up, our Black Mage is going to go ahead and blow these guys away. And that's how you win this second turn. It definitely takes a lot of team coordination, especially between the tanks. Tanks need to be on the same wavelength or in direct communication with each other, ideally. We did not have any sort of comms set up, but we had done a few runs together and we got a feel for how the other one tanked. And that was really the driving force here. And our DPS just really coming together and using those AoE damage attacks and just everything, their cooldowns all at the right time. So This one did give me a little trouble. I got hung up on it for a couple hours. I know a lot of people out there are saying, oh, it's easy, it's this and that. And it is in theory, but it's very incredibly easy to get overrun. So I'm hoping that this little video guide helps out anybody who's still struggling with this turn, and help you get some of that new gear to let yourself come right back around in here and take it out again a lot easier next time. So I'm going to be back with floor 3, hopefully tonight, if I have any kind of luck. And you'll see here I don't get... I'm going to roll an 82 on that, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm in good position, but I'll just spoiler alert it here. I did not end up winning that roll, unfortunately. So I've still yet to get any of the drops from the new turns, but hey, that's what this is all about, right? It doesn't come quick. You got to work for it. At least we have the ability to farm it repeatedly. So, anyway, in conclusion, the focus of the fight is just group dynamic. Tanks balance the mobs between each other, try to stay positioned on top of each other for the healer's sanity and for the, any AoE damage that your party possesses. DPS, stay on your game, manage your cooldowns effectively, especially for those later waves. Have your weakest damage output take the walker to move the bombs if you want to use that strategy, or just go ahead and dodge them. That's another viable mechanic. And as always, guys, I want to thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to comment and subscribe, and I will see you next time.